The morning sun was just rising over the city skyline when panic erupted in the grand corporate tower of Anderton Enterprises. The echo of a child's cry cut through the marble halls like a knife. Small footsteps slapped against the polished floor, and a trembling little voice shouted through tears, "Somebody help. My mom's not moving." In that moment, time seemed to stop. The CEO of one of the city's biggest companies, feared, respected, and admired, was lying unconscious on her office floor, her hand still clutching a pen, papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. And as everyone stood frozen in shock, it wasn't a doctor, a manager, or a security guard who moved first, it was the janitor. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing good when no one's watching, then take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. These stories remind us that sometimes the most ordinary people do the most extraordinary things. The janitor's name was Daniel Rios, a quiet, middle-aged man with tired eyes and calloused hands. He had been cleaning those same offices for nearly 10 years, invisible to most of the suits who passed him by. No one knew that before the uniform, before the mop and bucket, Daniel had once been a paramedic, until tragedy shattered his life and he lost everything that mattered. Since then, he had stayed silent, doing his job quietly, grateful for the second chance the world had reluctantly given him. But on that morning, fate decided to give him another kind of second chance, one that would change everything. The little girl, Emma, couldn't have been more than 7. Her pigtails were coming undone, her eyes swollen from tears. Daniel had seen her before, skipping down the halls on Fridays when her mother, Claire Anderton, brought her to work. Claire was known for her no-nonsense attitude, her sharp intellect, and the way her presence could silence a room. To see such a woman, powerful, untouchable, collapsed on the cold floor made Daniel's heart twist. Without hesitation, he ran to her side. Dropping to his knees, Daniel felt for a pulse. It was faint. Too faint. He loosened her collar, tilted her head back, and began chest compressions. "Come on, breathe," he whispered under his breath, sweat rolling down his temple. His hands moved with practiced precision, muscle memory taking over from years of training he thought he had buried. Emma sobbed beside him, clutching her mother's hand, whispering, "Please, Mommy, please wake up." By then, several employees had gathered at the door, frozen, whispering among themselves but doing nothing. No one dared to move closer, no one except Daniel. Minutes passed like hours. Just when despair started to settle in, Claire gasped, her body jerking slightly as air rushed back into her lungs. Emma screamed with relief, throwing her tiny arms around her mother. The tension that had gripped the entire floor shattered, replaced by the stunned realization that the janitor had just saved their CEO's life. Paramedics arrived moments later, taking over the situation, but Daniel stayed back, sitting quietly by the corner, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't want recognition, he was just relieved she was alive. Yet, as they wheeled Claire out on a stretcher, her gaze met his, weak but full of emotion. She mouthed the words, "Thank you." For Daniel, that was enough. Over the next few days, the story spread like wildfire through the company. The CEO, saved by her janitor. Some employees whispered admiration, others disbelief. Many who had never even looked Daniel in the eye before suddenly greeted him in the halls. But Daniel remained humble, uncomfortable with the sudden attention. What no one knew was that the incident had reopened old wounds inside him. Years ago, he had been unable to save his own wife after a car accident. He had blamed himself, drowning in guilt until his career, his confidence, and his life fell apart. That guilt had followed him every day, hidden behind a mop and a smile. But now, for the first time in years, he felt like he had made peace with his past. When Claire returned to work 2 weeks later, she didn't go straight to the boardroom. She went to find Daniel. He was in the basement, scrubbing floors as usual. When she appeared, everyone froze. No CEO ever came down there. But Claire walked right up to him, tears in her eyes, and hugged him tightly. "You didn't just save my life," she whispered, "you saved my daughter's world." Daniel didn't know what to say. For a long moment, the two stood there, one who had fallen from grace, and one who had just found hers again. Claire insisted on promoting Daniel, offering him a position as part of the company's emergency response and safety training program. But Daniel hesitated. "I don't want recognition," he said softly. "I just want to help where I can." Claire smiled. "Then you'll be helping me build something better." She renamed the initiative Project Second Chance, inspired by him, a program dedicated to hiring people who had fallen on hard times but wanted to rebuild their lives. Months passed, and Daniel's story continued to inspire everyone who heard it. Emma often visited him, bringing small handmade cards or drawings that said things like, "My hero," and, "Thank you, Mr. Dan." She would tell her friends at school that her mom's best friend was a janitor who could save lives. For Daniel, those words meant more than any award ever could. But the most touching moment came one afternoon when Claire called him to her office. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I never told you this, but when I woke up that day, I saw your face before anyone else's. I thought I was dreaming, because my late husband was also a paramedic. For a second, I thought maybe he had sent you." Daniel smiled gently, his eyes misty. "Maybe he did," he replied. In the months that followed, both Daniel and Claire found healing in ways they hadn't thought possible. She became a more compassionate leader, someone who saw beyond titles and suits. And Daniel, he no longer saw himself as just a janitor. He saw himself as a man who had finally made peace with the past by saving a life when it mattered most. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support helps bring more real, emotional stories of compassion and courage to life. Speech balloon special request, comment below, what's one act of kindness that changed your life or someone else's? We'd love to share your story next.